When I saw the white dress hanging in her closet, my heart stopped. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, looked me straight in the eyes and told me with an icy smile, "Oh, we actually got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Those words hit me like a bucket of ice-cold water. Special people. I, who for 3 years had paid their rent of $2,000 a month, who had bought every single piece of furniture in their apartment, who filled their refrigerator when they did not even have enough to eat. I was not a special person. I stood there in the living room of my own house, staring at that wedding dress, as if it were a ghost, watching my son Robert avoid my gaze while Sarah comfortably settled onto the sofa that I had bought for them. The gray suit I had picked out for their wedding was hanging, completely useless, in my closet right next to my new shoes, and the illusion of being part of the most important day in the life of my only son. I had spent $800 on that suit, thinking about the pride I would feel in Robert's wedding photos, photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every single detail. I had set aside $5,000 as a wedding gift. I had even called my sister Mary out in Chicago to share the good news. I had cleaned my house from top to bottom, thinking that maybe they would come over to celebrate with me after the ceremony. Everything collapsed in a single second with those 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Robert finally looked up and told me with a voice that sounded rehearsed, "Dad." It was something intimate, very small. Just the 2 of us and the witnesses. But I knew that was a lie. I had seen the pictures on social media. I saw Sarah's parents posing proudly next to the bride and groom. I saw her brothers toasting with champagne. I saw Sarah's white dress, the one I had helped pay for with the $400 I gave her for personal expenses just last month. I saw everything that I had not been invited to witness. 1 week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Sarah called me with a completely different tone of voice. She was no longer the confident woman who had excluded me from her wedding. Now, she sounded desperate, almost begging. "Mike, the rent is late. The landlord is pressuring us. And he says, if we do not pay this week, he is going to evict us. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled slightly, as if the entire world were crashing down on her. I stayed quiet for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to make those transfers, all the times I had canceled my own plans just to make sure they had a roof over their heads, all the times I had eaten cheap sandwiches and beans so I could give them money for their whims. And now, after excluding me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the nerve to call me as if absolutely nothing had happened. "Sarah," I said with a calmness that surprised even me. "Did I not tell you I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so deep I could hear my own heart beating. For the first time in years, I was not the one trembling. It was her. "Mike, I do not understand." She stuttered. "We have always been special to you. You are like a second father to me." Lies. All lies wrapped in that sweet voice she only ever used when she needed something. The exact same voice she had used to ask me for money for her wedding dress, for their honeymoon trip, for the wedding bands I had helped finance without knowing I would never even see the ceremony where they exchanged them. For so many years, I had lived with that constant feeling of walking on eggshells, measuring every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to receive just a crumb of affection from my own son. I had been the perfect father, the accommodating father-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when they treated me like I was invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," had awakened something inside me that had been asleep for a very long time. I calculated in my head how much money I had spent on them over the last 3 years. The rent, to the food, The gifts, the emergencies, and the whims. Over $120,000. Money I had pulled from my pension, from my savings, from the money my late wife Carol had left behind so I could live my final years in peace. And for what? To be treated like a stranger on the day of my own son's wedding. That night, after hanging up the phone, I sat on my bed and cried. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of built-up frustration, of years of humiliation swallowed in silence. I cried for all the times they made me feel like my love was a burden, that my presence was an annoyance, that my money was the only valuable thing I had to offer. When I woke up the next morning, something had shifted inside me. It was not just the pain of betrayal, it was something much deeper, something colder. I got up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes as always. The same wrinkles that told stories of years giving love without getting it back. But there was something different in my gaze. A hardness I did not recognize. A determination that had been buried under years of trying to please them. I went to the kitchen and brewed coffee, just like I had every morning for the last 40 years. But this time, I did not think about calling Robert to ask how he slept. I did not check my phone expecting a message from him, apologizing for the humiliation of the day before. For the first time in a long time, my very first concern of the day was myself. I sat at the table where I had planned so many surprises for them, where I had counted out dollar bills for their expenses, where I had silently cried when they treated me with indifference. Now, that table was going to witness something entirely different. I pulled out my checkbook and my bank statements, and I started doing the math. I wanted to see the exact number. Monthly rent, $2,000 for 36 months. $72,000. Groceries and pantry supplies. About $600 a month. $21,000 more. Birthday gifts. Christmas. Wedding anniversaries. At least $12,000. Sarah's medical emergency. $3,000. The car loan they never paid me back for. $10,000. The air conditioning repair for their apartment. $2,000. The living room furniture. $6,000. Total over $120,000. That was the exact figure of my generosity. I had thrown away over $120,000 that I had taken from my wife's inheritance. My pension, from the savings I had guarded penny by penny through decades of honest hard work, all that money tossed in the trash to keep two grown adults comfortable. Two people who could not even pretend to respect me. The phone rang. I saw Robert's name on the screen. Normally, I would have run to answer it with my heart pounding, hoping he would finally ask for forgiveness, that he would explain this was all a massive misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. It finally stopped, and I kept drinking my coffee as if nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time it was Sarah. I let hers ring. 2. Then a text message came in from Robert. Dad. Answer the phone. We need to talk to you urgently. I deleted the message without replying. At 10 in the morning, I decided to go for a walk. It had been months since I had gone out without a specific purpose, without running an errand for them. It was always going to the bank to make transfers, to the supermarket to buy something they needed, or to the pharmacy to get Sarah's medicine. Today, I walked simply because I felt like it. I walked past the park where I used to take Robert when he was a little boy. I remembered that sweet kid who used to hug me tight and tell me I was the best dad in the world. At what point did he turn into this man who treated me like an ATM with feelings at the bank where I had made so many automatic transfers? I stopped right in front of the door. The branch manager, Mr. Reynolds saw me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every single one of my transfers for Robert and Sarah. He had watched my account drain month after month to fill theirs. I walked in and went straight to his office. Mr. Reynolds, I said, I need to cancel all the automatic transfers I have scheduled. He looked at me. I'm surprised. For 3 years, those transfers had been as regular as the sunrise. Are you sure? Mike, did something happen? His concern was genuine. More genuine than any interest Robert had shown in me over the past few months. What happened is that I finally opened my eyes. I replied, I want to cancel everything. And I also want information on how to lock down my accounts. I do not want anyone else having access to my money. While Mr. Reynolds processed the cancellations, my phone would not stop ringing. Robert. Sarah. Robert again. It was as if they had developed a radar to detect the exact moment their income source was in danger. I powered the phone completely off. Mike, Mr. Reynolds said as he handed me the paperwork. Forgive me for overstepping. But in all these years, I have seen you be incredibly generous with your family. I just hope they are not pressuring you into making these changes. Those words touched me deeply. This man, who barely knew me outside of banking transactions, was showing more sincere concern for my well-being than my own son. They are not pressuring me. Mr. Reynolds, on the contrary, I finally stopped pressuring myself. When I walked out of the bank, I felt strangely light, as if I had left a massive weight behind in that office. For the first time in years, my money was completely my own. I had no financial obligations to people who saw me as a resource instead of a human being. I walked back home, thinking about all the things I had stopped doing just to please Robert and Sarah. The trips I never took so I could save money for them. The friends I stopped seeing because I was always on call for their emergencies. The hobbies I abandoned because every dollar I spent on myself was $1 less for their needs. When I arrived at my house, I found 3 cars parked right in front of my door. Robert's car, Sarah's car, and one I did not recognize. There was movement inside my house. I could see it through the windows. My blood ran cold. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them, because I thought one day they would take care of me the way I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath before opening the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened my front door and walked into a scene I will never forget. Robert was sitting on my sofa with his head in his hands. Sarah was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. And there was an older man I did not know examining papers on my dining room table. My papers, my personal documents. What is going on here? I asked, my voice sounding strangely calm. The 3 of them looked at me as if I were the intruder in my own home. Sarah was the first to speak. Her voice carried that desperate urgency I had heard on the phone. Mike, thank God you are here. We need to talk. Mr. Vance is from the law firm where we consulted about your situation. My situation? The question slipped out of my mouth with a calmness that surprised me. What situation? I am perfectly fine. Robert finally lifted his head and looked at me with those eyes that once belonged to an innocent boy, but now only reflected sheer financial panic. Dad, we went to the bank and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Reynolds explained that you also blocked our access to your accounts. We do not understand why you did that. Mr. Vance, a man in his 50s wearing a gray suit and a smile that did not inspire an ounce of trust, stepped toward me with his hand extended. Mike, I am Frank Vance, an attorney specializing in family law. Your children are worried about your mental well-being, and they have asked me to evaluate the situation. I did not shake his hand. Instead, I walked straight to my dining room table and gathered up all the documents he had been examining without my permission. These are my private papers. You have absolutely no right to go through them without my authorization. Dad, Robert interrupted, using that condescending tone he had perfected over the last few years. We are worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First, you cut us off financially without any explanation. Then you stop answering our calls. We think maybe you need professional help. Sarah walked over and tried to grab my hand with that fake tenderness she reserved strictly for when she needed something. Mike, sweetheart, we know you have been under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. It is completely normal at your age to have episodes of confusion. The word confusion rang in my head like an alarm bell. Now I understood why they had brought the lawyer. It was not to help me. It was to declare me mentally incompetent so they could seize control of my finances. The exact same woman who had told me they only invited special people to their wedding was now treating me like a senile old man. I am not confused, I said with a firmness that shut all of them up. I am more lucid right now than I have been in years. And you are all going to get out of my house immediately. Mr. Vance stepped in, using that professional voice lawyers use when they want to sound completely reasonable. Mike, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have the legal right to intervene if they believe your capacity to make financial decisions is compromised. They have documented several concerning behaviors. Concerning behaviors, the laugh that escaped my throat was almost cruel. Like deciding that my money belongs to me. Like choosing not to fund the lives of two grown adults who treat me like garbage. Sarah flinched as if I had slapped her. We have never mistreated you. You are part of our family. Everything you have is going to be ours someday anyway. We are just speeding up the process. There it was. The raw, naked truth. Everything I had would be theirs one day. In her mind. I was already dead, and they were simply collecting their inheritance early. It did not matter if I had 70 years left to live or 70 days. To them, I was just a walking bank account that had suddenly become problematic. Get out, I said, pointing straight at the door. All three of you. Out of my house. Robert stood up, wearing the expression of a spoiled child who did not get his way. Dad, we cannot just leave like this. We have responsibilities. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed. You cannot just cut us off from one day to the next. I cannot. My voice rose for the very first time during this entire conversation. Who says I cannot? For 36 months I paid rent for an apartment that is not even in my name. I filled a refrigerator in a home where I am not welcome. I funded a life that clearly does not have a place for me in it. Mr. Vance pulled a folder out of his briefcase and placed it on my table. Mike, we have prepared some documents that could make this transition easier. A power of attorney that would allow Robert and Sarah to manage your finances more efficiently. It would just be temporary. Only until you feel better. I picked up the folder and threw it directly into the trash can without even opening it. The only transition happening here is you people transitioning out my front door. Sarah started to cry. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of sheer frustration, of bottled-up rage. You cannot do this to us. Mike, we counted on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on financial commitments because we knew we had you to fall back on. Commitments based on my money, I replied. Not on my well-being. Not on my happiness. Not on my company. Just my money. And now that I have decided my money is better spent on my own life, suddenly I am a confused old man who needs legal supervision. Robert tried to take a step toward me, but I took a step back. He was no longer the little boy who ran into my arms when he had nightmares. He was a 35-year-old man who viewed his father as an obstacle standing between him and a comfortable life paid for by someone else. "Dad, we have made mistakes," he said, trying to make his voice sound apologetic. "The wedding thing. It was a misunderstanding. Sarah was nervous. I was under a lot of pressure. We can fix this if you just go back to being reasonable." Reasonable. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treat me like a stranger. It means pretending it does not hurt that I was excluded from the most important day of my only son's life. Mr. Vance packed up his papers with the efficiency of someone accustomed to having his proposals rejected. "Mike, this does not end here. Your family has legal options. If you are genuinely making irrational decisions due to mental health issues, a judge can determine that you need supervision." Those words felt like a physical blow. I realized this was not just a manipulative family visit. This was a real legal threat. They wanted to declare me incompetent to manage my own affairs. "Mr. Vance," I said, looking him dead in the eyes, "I suggest you do your research very well before you threaten a 65-year-old man who has managed his finances flawlessly for 40 years. A man who raised a son completely alone after becoming a widower. A man who maintained a home, worked until he honorably retired, and who, up until last week, fully financially supported two perfectly capable adults." Sarah stopped crying and looked at me with a coldness that finally revealed her true face. "This is not over. Mike, we have rights. And we have lawyers too." "Perfect," I replied. "Hire all the lawyers you want with your own money. Because mine is no longer available to fund your legal crises." The three of them headed toward the door with the wounded dignity of people who are not used to hearing the word no. Right before walking out, Robert turned back to look at me one last time. "Dad, this is going to end very badly for you. You are going to end up all alone, with no one to take care of you when you actually need it." "Robert," I said with a deep sadness, but also with crystal clarity, "I am already alone. The only difference is that now it is by my own choice, not because of your neglect." When the door closed behind them, I stood in my living room, surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night, I could not sleep, but it was not out of sadness or regret. It was from the adrenaline of having taken back control of my own life. I lay awake in bed, planning my next moves, like a general preparing for battle. If Robert and Sarah wanted a fight, I would give them a war, but it would be a war fought with intelligence, not with emotions. By 6 in the morning, I was already dressed and ready to go. My first stop was the office of John Miller, a lawyer I had met years ago when I set up my wife's will. Unlike Mr. Vance, whom Robert and Sarah had brought over, John had a spotless reputation and specialized in protecting the rights of senior citizens. "Mike," he told me after I explained the situation, "what your children tried to do yesterday is far more common than you think. It is called elder financial abuse. And it is a crime. The fact that they entered your home without permission and went through your private documents also constitutes a violation." His words reassured me and alarmed me at the same time. Reassured me, because they confirmed I was not crazy, that what happened was genuinely abusive. Alarmed me, because I realized the situation was far more serious than I had thought. "We need to document everything," John continued. "Every transfer, every gift, every single time they pressured you for money. We are also going to update your will to protect your assets from any future manipulation attempts." We spent 3 hours going through my financial records. John whistled when he saw the total amount over 3 years. "Mike, with this money, you could have lived incredibly comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, You fully funded the lives of two adults who did not even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left John's office, I had a complete plan. First, change every single lock on my house. Second, install a security system with cameras to protect myself from any future surprise visits. Third, open a brand new bank account at a completely different bank where they had zero contacts. Fourth, start living the life I had put on hold for years. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Martin, had known me for years because I was always going in to buy things to fix up Robert and Sarah's apartment. But this time was different. "Mike, what brings you in today?" "Another emergency over at your son's place," he asked, with the familiarity of someone who had been a silent witness to my wasted generosity. "No, Martin, this time it is for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want the best quality ones you carry." He looked surprised, but did not ask questions. While I was picking out the deadbolts, his son, Gabe, who worked installing security systems, walked in. It was Providence in action. "Gabe," I said, "I also need to install security cameras. The whole complete system? Price is not an issue." While I was finalizing the setup for the installation the very next day, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Sarah, calling from someone else's phone because I had blocked her number after the confrontation yesterday. "Mike, it is Sarah. Please do not hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults." "Doen to timbre. Talk," I said dryly. "Look, I understand you are angry about the wedding. It was a mistake. Robert and I talked, and we want to make it up to you. What if we organize a special dinner to celebrate our marriage with you? We could do it at your house. Cook together, just like old times." The manipulation in those words was so blatant it almost made me laugh. "Sarah, exactly how much do you owe in rent right now?" The silence on the other end confirmed I had hit a nerve. "Well, it is 2 months, $4,000 total. But that is not the only reason I am calling Mike. We really miss having you in our lives." "Do you miss me? Or do you miss my money? Both," she answered, with an honesty that caught me off guard. "Mike, I am not going to lie. Yes, we need your financial help, but we also love you. You are important to us." "If I am so important," I said, "why was I not important enough to be at the wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a phone call that is not asking for money? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing?" Another silence. We both knew the answer. "Never. Sarah, I am going to explain something to you only one time. For 3 years, you treated me like an ATM with feelings. You abused me, ignored me, humiliated me, and finally insulted me in the worst way imaginable. Now that the money is gone, suddenly you realize you love me. You made your choice when you decided I was not special enough to be at your wedding. Now I am making mine." I hung up and turned the phone completely off. I did not want any more interruptions during my day of liberation. That afternoon, I went to the barber shop. I had not been there in over a year. I always canceled my appointments because Robert or Sarah needed something urgently, or because the money I had set aside for myself ended up going toward one of their emergencies. "Mike," yelled Anthony, my favorite barber. "What a surprise, I thought you had forgotten about us." "I did not forget about you, Anthony. I just forgot that I deserved to be taken care of. 2, I got the full treatment. A haircut, a beard trim, even a manicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without feeling a shred of guilt. While Anthony worked, he talked to me about his life, his kids, his dreams. It was so refreshing to have a conversation that did not revolve around Robert and Sarah's needs. "You look great, Mike," he told me when he finished. "But more than that, you look free." "Did something good happen?" "Yes, Anthony. When I got home that afternoon, there was a car parked in front of my door that I did not recognize. My heart raced for a second, thinking that maybe Robert and Sarah had come back with backup. But as I got closer, I saw an older man sitting on the front steps of my porch. "Mike," he asked when I stepped out of the car. "Yes, that is me." "How can I help you?" "I am Andrew Harris. I live in the house next door. We have been neighbors for years, but we have never really had the chance to talk. Yesterday, I heard some very loud voices coming from your house, and I was worried. Is everything all right?" His genuine concern touched me deeply. Here was a stranger showing more interest in my well-being than my own son. "Come inside. Andrew, I am going to make some coffee, and I will tell you a story you are not going to believe." While I brewed the coffee, I told him the entire situation. Andrew listened without interrupting, nodding every now and then. And when I finished my story, his eyes were full of compassion. "Mike," he said, "you did the right thing. I went through something very similar with my son 5 years ago. I also thought it was my obligation to fund his adult life. I also believed that if I did not give them money, they would not love me." "What happened?" I asked. "I cut off the money when I realized he only called when he needed something. At first, it was terrible. He threatened me. He tried emotional blackmail. He tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months, my son called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not on money." Those words gave me hope and confirmed that I had made the right decision. "Do you think Robert and Sarah will ever understand?" "Maybe yes, maybe no," he answered honestly. "But that is no longer your responsibility." "Mike, your responsibility now is to live your own life." That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to sleep without worrying about whether Robert and Sarah had money for rent, for groceries, or for their wants. I went to sleep thinking about myself, about my projects, about my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next day, Gabe and Martin arrived at 9 in the morning to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone kept ringing from unknown numbers. Sarah was still trying to reach me from different phones, but I had developed a new skill, completely ignoring calls that did not benefit me. "Mike," Gabe said while setting up the cameras, "this system is going to give you total peace of mind. You can see who comes to your house right from your phone, even when you are not here. And if anyone enters without permission, it automatically sends an alert to the police." The irony did not escape me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own son, but it did not hurt like it used to. It was simply a practical measure to protect my newfound peace. While they finished up, I decided to do something I had not done in years. I called my sister Mary in Chicago. We had lost touch because every time we talked, I ended up telling her about Robert and Sarah's latest exploits, how much money I had spent on them, and the pride I felt in being able to help them. Now I realized that our conversations had basically turned into financial reports disguised as family news. "Mike," Mary answered, surprised. "Brother, how are you? We have not talked in months." "I am good." "Mary, better than ever." "Actually, I am calling to tell you that I finally got my sanity back." I told her the whole story from the very beginning. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the visit with the lawyer, my decision to cut off their funding. Mary listened in silence. And when I finished, her response surprised me. "Mike, brother, it is about time." Every time we talked, It broke my heart to hear you bragging about how much money you gave Robert. As if love were measured in dollars. I wanted to say something, but I did not know how. What did you want to tell me that Robert never spoke about you with affection when I saw him at family gatherings? It was always, my dad helped me out with this. Or, my dad bought me that. But it was never friend. I miss my dad. Or I love my dad. It was like you were a service. Not a person. Those words hurt. But it was a necessary pain. Like when a doctor cleans an infected wound. It hurts. But it is part of the healing process. You know what stuck with me the most, Mary continued. Sarah always talked about you in the future tense. When Mike is no longer around, we can remodel his house. Or, when we inherit, we will invest in the business. It was as if they were just waiting for you to die so they could finally start living. That revelation hit me like a bucket of ice water. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary obstacle standing between them and the money. While I was bending over backward to make them happy, they were planning a future without me. After hanging up with Mary, I sat in my kitchen digesting all that information. 45 years of marriage with a woman who truly loved me. 35 years raising a son all alone after becoming a widower. 3 years funding 2 adults who saw me as a millionaire roadblock. The doorbell rang, and I checked the new cameras. It was Andrew holding a mug. I opened the door, and he offered me freshly brewed coffee. Thought you might need some company after everything you told me yesterday, he said, with that sincere smile I had already begun to appreciate. We sat in my living room, and Andrew shared more details about his own experience. My son used to tell me the exact same things Sarah says to you. You are like a second father to me. We are special to you. Someday all of this will be ours. They are rehearsed lines. Mike, they learn them straight out of the Emotional Manipulation Handbook. Do you think that handbook actually exists? I asked. Half joking. Not officially, but it seems like they all read the exact same book. Chapter 1. Make him feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. If he resists. Question. His mental health? We laughed bitterly. It was funny and tragic at the same time to recognize such predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had been putting off for years. I visited my wife's grave. I always found excuses not to go because Robert or Sarah needed something, or because the gas money was better spent on one of their emergencies. The cemetery was quiet and beautiful. Carol's grave looked a bit neglected because I had not been there to clean it in months. I sat on the grass next to her headstone and talked to her as if she were still alive. Carol, my love, I think I lost myself for a while. After you left, I poured all my energy into Robert. I wanted to be the best father in the world to somehow make up for him growing up without a mother. But I think in the process, I forgot how to be myself. Our son turned into someone I do not even recognize. Or maybe he was always this way and I just refused to see it. And his wife? Well, you know how she is. The money you left so I could live in peace. I spent it all supporting them, but not anymore. My love, I have learned. I cleaned her headstone, replaced the wilted flowers with fresh ones, and stayed there for another hour, simply enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I was in no rush to get back home to solve a crisis for Robert and Sarah. When I pulled up to my house, there were 3 cars parked out front again. My heart started racing, but this time I was prepared. The cameras on my phone showed me it was Robert, Sarah, and 2 people I did not recognize. They all looked agitated, talking amongst themselves and pointing at my house. I did not get out of my car. Instead, I called John. My lawyer. John, there at my house again. This time they brought more people. What should I do? Do not get out of the car. Mike, I am heading over there right now, and I am calling the police. After our conversation yesterday, I filed for a temporary restraining order. They cannot be on your property. 15 minutes later, John and 2 patrol cars pulled up. I watched as the police officers spoke with Robert and Sarah. I saw my son gesturing furiously. I saw Sarah crying all over again. But this time, those tears had zero effect on me. One of the officers walked over to my car. Sir, you can step out safely. Your visitors are leaving right now. When I got out of the car, Robert yelled from the street. Dad, this is ridiculous. We are your family. You cannot call the cops on your own son, Robert. I replied, with a calmness that surprised me. Family does not threaten you with mental incompetence lawsuits. Family does not break into your house without permission. Family does not treat their parents like ATMs. Sarah yelled from across the street. You are going to pay us back for everything you owe us. We have bills that you co-signed. You cannot just abandon us like this. John stepped in. Ma'am, all future communication must go through my office, and I highly suggest you consult an attorney before making threats about collections, because my client has full documentation of every single voluntary payment he made over the last 3 years. I watched them drive away. Defeated but not surrendering, I knew this was not over. But for the very first time in this entire ordeal, I felt confident. I had professional help. I had Andrew's emotional support. And most importantly, I had mental clarity about what was right and what was wrong. That night, Andrew invited me over for dinner. I met his son, who had come to visit, and I saw with my own eyes what a healthy family dynamic looked like. They spoke with respect. They took a genuine interest in each other's lives. They laughed together. His son did not ask for money a single time during the entire evening. This is what I wanted with Robert. I confessed to Andrew after his son left. And maybe someday you will have it, he replied. But he has to learn that you are a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income. For the first time in weeks, I went to sleep feeling completely filled with hope for the future. The following days were strangely quiet. The security cameras showed Robert and Sarah driving past my house several times a day, sometimes slowly, sometimes stopping for a few minutes, but never getting out. It was as if they were studying my routine, waiting for the perfect moment for their next move. John had advised me to document every single one of these drive-bys, so I kept a detailed log with the date and time. Their persistence is going to play in our favor, he had told me, every time they show up after being told to stay away. It strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, I was quietly eating my breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras showed a well-dressed young woman holding a clipboard and wearing a professional smile. I did not recognize her, but something about her posture told me this was not a social call. Good morning, Mike, she said when I opened the door. I am a social worker with Adult Protective Services. We received a report that you might be in an at-risk situation, and we need to conduct a welfare check. My blood ran cold. Robert and Sarah had escalated the situation. It was no longer just threats from private lawyers. Now they had involved the government. May I see your ID? I asked, trying to keep my composure. Of course. She showed me an official badge that looked completely legitimate. I am Emily Taylor. May I come in to speak with you? I let her in because I knew refusing would only make my case look worse. Emily sat in my living room and pulled a form from her clipboard. Mike, we have received reports that you have undergone significant changes in your financial behavior, that you cut off communication with your family, and that you have shown signs of paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were also informed that you have been refusing medical and legal help from your loved ones. Every single word had been carefully chosen to make me sound like an unhinged old man. I recognized Sarah's hand in the phrasing. She had always been skilled at twisting words to get exactly what she wanted. "Ms. Taylor," I said, with all the dignity I could muster, "I would like to call my lawyer before answering any questions." "Sir, this is not a legal interrogation. It is a welfare check. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem speaking with me." That phrase, "if you have nothing to hide," infuriated me. It was the exact same logic abusers use to justify their invasions of privacy. "Ma'am, I am going to call my lawyer. You can wait here, or you can come back another day. But I will not answer a single question without legal representation present." I called John, and he arrived in 20 minutes. When he walked in and saw the social worker, his expression hardened. "Ms. Taylor," he said, after examining her badge, "I assume you have a warrant to be here, because my client is under my legal representation, and any unauthorized evaluation constitutes harassment." "Sir," Emily replied, with a bit less confidence than before, "we have reports from concerned family members regarding this gentleman's well-being." "What family?" John asked dryly. "The same family that tried to force him to sign a power of attorney without representation. The same family that broke into his home without permission and went through his private documents. The same family that excluded him from major life events while actively living off his money." John pulled a thick folder out of his briefcase and slammed it onto the table. "Right here. I have full documentation of financial and emotional abuse against my client. Over $120,000 extracted from his accounts over 3 years. Systematic social exclusion. Emotional blackmail. If anyone needs to be investigated here, it is not my client." Emily flipped through the documents with growing discomfort. It was painfully obvious that the information she had been fed did not match the reality sitting right in front of her. "Mike," she finally said, looking at me, "can you explain why you decided to cut off your son's financial support so abruptly?" "Because I finally realized I was being used." I answered simply. "Because I realized that to them, I was not a father. I was a bank account. Because I got tired of funding the lives of people who viewed me as a roadblock." "But do you not consider it your responsibility to help your family?" That question offended me. "Miss Taylor, my responsibility as a father was to raise my son until he was 18, to educate him, and give him the tools to be an independent adult. My son is 35 years old. He is married. He is perfectly capable of supporting himself. Funding his adult life is not my responsibility. It is my choice, and I chose to stop doing it." John stepped in before she could respond. "Ms. Taylor, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be completely unable to pay his own rent without the help of his 65-year-old father?" Emily did not respond right away. I could tell she was recalculating the entire situation in her head. "Mike?" she asked after a moment. "Do you manage your own finances completely? I can show you my bank statements, my investments, my tax returns. Everything is current and in perfect order. You live independently, as you can see. I keep my house clean. I take care of my physical health. I drive my own car, and I have very healthy social relationships with my neighbors. Do you take any medication? Just vitamins and supplements? I do not have any medical conditions that require prescriptions." John added, "My client just passed comprehensive medical evaluations as part of our legal process. He is in perfect mental and physical health." Emily closed her folder and let out a long sigh. "Mike, based on this conversation and the documentation I have reviewed, I see zero evidence that you are in any danger or that you require intervention. I am closing this case." After she left, John and I sat in silence for a few minutes. "Mike," he finally said, "this is going to keep escalating. Robert and Sarah are not going to stop until they get access to your money again. We need to prepare for their next move." That afternoon, while thinking over the social worker's visit, I realized something important. I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like a man who had taken absolute control of his life and was fully prepared to defend it. I called Mary to tell her everything that had happened. "Mike, brother," she said to me after listening to everything, "you know what impresses me the most about this story? It is not about how badly Robert and Sarah behaved. It is about how strong you have become." Those words touched me deeply. She was right. A month ago, a social worker's visit would have devastated me. It would have made me doubt myself. It would have made me consider going back to funding Robert and Sarah, just to avoid problems. But now, I was firm in my decisions. That night, Andrew came over to see me with a bottle of wine. "Mike, I want to celebrate with you. Celebrate that today you resisted another attack against your freedom, and you came out victorious. Every time you stand your ground, you become stronger." We toasted to my new strength, to my new life, to the freedom that I had been unknowingly waiting for over the years. "Andrew," I said while we drank our wine, "do you think I will ever stop missing the Robert he used to be when he was a little boy? Probably not." He answered honestly, "But you are going to stop letting that nostalgia keep you a prisoner to the Robert he is now." Those words held a profound wisdom. I could love the little boy who had been my son, without allowing the abusive adult he had become to keep hurting me. That night I slept deeply, knowing that every single day I was becoming stronger, more independent, more free. Robert and Sarah could keep trying to manipulate me, blackmail me, or scare me, but they had already lost their power over me. My new life was just beginning. The following weeks were a period of transformation. With the money I used to spend on Robert and Sarah, I started doing things I had put off for years. I joined a chess club that had always interested me. I started taking painting classes on Tuesday afternoons. I even bought myself new clothes, something I had not done in 3 years, because that money was always better spent on Robert's needs. Andrew became a true friend. We saw each other almost every day, whether it was to grab coffee, play cards, or just talk about life. He introduced me to other neighbors I had never really gotten to know, because I was always too busy solving my son's crises. One Saturday morning, while I was eating breakfast in my quiet new routine, I received a certified letter. It was from a different law firm than Mr. Vance's. With trembling hands, I opened it. It was a formal lawsuit. Robert and Sarah were suing me for abandonment of family responsibilities and the arbitrary withdrawal of promised financial support. They were demanding $25,000 in damages, plus the reinstatement of my monthly payments. I sat at the kitchen table, reading and rereading the lawsuit. One part of me felt sheer panic. Another part felt a strange sense of calm. This was exactly what John had predicted would happen. I immediately called my lawyer. "John, I received the lawsuit. We were expecting it. Mike, in fact, this is good for us. Now everything is in the formal legal system, where we can defend ourselves with evidence and facts. But can they actually win? Can they force me to keep giving them money? Not in this state. There is no legal obligation for a father to fund healthy adult children. All the money you gave them was voluntary. They would have to prove that there was a formal contract or a legally binding promise. Did you ever sign anything like that? Never. Everything was verbal and voluntary. Then they have no case. But we are going to use this as an opportunity to present our countersuit for elder financial and emotional abuse. I am going to request that they be ordered to reimburse you for at least a portion of what they took from you. That conversation calmed me down. I was not alone in this. I had competent legal representation and the truth on my side. 2 days later, John called me with news. Mike, the judge assigned to your case is Judge Davis. She is known for being extremely strict when it comes to cases of elder abuse. This is highly favorable for us. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. During that time, John and I met several times to prepare our case. We reviewed every transfer, every receipt, every text message where Robert or Sarah asked me for money. This message is particularly revealing, John said, pointing to one from Sarah. Mike, we need $500 urgently for the car, or they will take it away. Please deposit it today. Thanks. She did not even ask if you could. She just assumed you would. They were all like that, I replied. It was never, can you help us? It was always, we need, as if it were my absolute obligation. John documented over 200 similar messages over a 3-year period. It was crushing evidence of the true dynamic of our relationship. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep well, not out of fear, but out of anticipation. Tomorrow, I would have to see Robert and Sarah face to face in a courtroom. I would have to listen to their arguments as to why they deserved my money. I would have to publicly defend myself against the accusations of being a bad father. Andrew came over to have coffee with me early that morning. Mike, remember something important today. You are not defending yourself against being a bad father. You are defending your right to live your own life. Those are two very different things. I arrived at the courthouse at exactly 9 o'clock. John was already there, reviewing documents. At 9:15, Robert and Sarah arrived with their new lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit who seemed entirely too confident. Robert saw me and immediately looked away. Sarah, on the other hand, looked at me with a mixture of rage and contempt that I had never seen in her before. There was no longer even the pretense of fake affection. Judge Davis entered at 9:30 on the dot. She was a woman in her 50s with a presence that commanded immediate respect. "Good morning," she said as she sat down. "I have reviewed the preliminary documents for this case, and I have a few questions before we proceed. Mr. Myers," she addressed Robert and Sarah's lawyer, "your lawsuit alleges abandonment of family responsibilities. Can you explain to me exactly which law establishes that a father has the responsibility to financially support healthy 35-year-old adults?" Mr. Myers became visibly nervous. "Your Honor, it is not so much a legal obligation as a moral one. My client and his wife reorganized their entire financial life based on the promise of support from Mike." "Promise?" asked the judge. "Do you have documentation of this promise? A signed contract? Any legal agreement?" "No, Your Honor. But there are 3 years of precedent of consistent payments that establish generosity, voluntary generosity, not a legal obligation." The judge interrupted. "Mr. Miller," she turned to John, "I understand you have a countersuit." "That is correct, Your Honor. We are countersuing for financial and emotional elder abuse. We have documentation of over $120,000 extracted from my client's accounts over 3 years, plus evidence of emotional manipulation, deliberate social exclusion, and even an attempt to declare him mentally incompetent to gain control of his finances. The judge reviewed the documents John presented. Her expression grew more serious with every single page. "Mike," she called me directly, "I would like to hear from you directly. Why did you decide to terminate the financial support to your son?" I stood up, my voice surprisingly steady. "Your Honor, for 3 years I fully funded the lives of my son and his wife. I paid their rent, their groceries, their whims. I spent over $120,000 that I pulled from my pension and the inheritance left by my late wife. All that time, they treated me as if I were invisible, except when they needed money. I never received a call that was not to ask for more. I was never invited to spend time with them unless they had a financial emergency. The breaking point was when they got married in secret and deliberately excluded me from the ceremony. When I asked them why, they told me they only invited special people. Who had paid for her wedding dress, for their rings, for everything. I was not a special person. 1 week later, they called me asking for rent money as if nothing had happened. That was when I understood that to them. I was not a father. I was just a source of income. The courtroom was completely silent. I even saw the court clerk with tears in her eyes. Sarah, the judge called out. Is it true that you excluded Mike from your wedding? Sarah stood up, looking far less confident now. Your Honor, it was a very small ceremony, very intimate. That does not answer my question. Did you deliberately exclude the groom's father from the wedding? Yes. And then you asked him for rent money a week later. We needed help. Your Honor, he had always helped us before because he was generous, not because it was his obligation, the judge said firmly. Mr. Myers, I am going to be very clear. I see absolutely no legal basis for your client's lawsuit. A father has zero obligation to fund capable adult children. All the money Mike gave them was voluntary, and it can cease whenever he decides. Furthermore, the evidence presented by Mr. Miller suggests a deeply concerning pattern of financial exploitation. I am going to schedule a full hearing for the countersuit, but as of right now, I am dismissing the original lawsuit. Robert jumped to his feet. This is not fair. He is our father. He has an obligation to take care of us, young man, the judge said with a voice that could freeze fire. Sit down. You are 35 years old. The only obligation your father had was the one he fulfilled until you turned 18. Everything else was love and generosity that you apparently confused with weakness. And let me make this perfectly clear: if I see any evidence that you are harassing, threatening, or manipulating Mike again, I will consider much more severe restraining orders. Do you understand me? Yes. Your Honor, Robert muttered. When we walked out of the courthouse, John gave me a hug. Mike, did you see that? We won. Not only did she dismiss their suit, she practically scolded them for abuse. But I did not feel victory. I felt a profound sadness. I had just fought a legal battle against my own son. I had won, but at what cost? Andrew was waiting for me outside the courthouse. When he saw me walk out, he knew immediately by my expression that something major had happened. Mike, how did it go? We won, I said simply. The judge completely dismissed their lawsuit. She even scolded them. Then why do you look so sad? Because I just fought a legal battle against my own son. Andrew, I won the battle. But I feel like I lost something much bigger. Andrew placed his hand on my shoulder. What you lost? Mike, you had already lost a long time ago. What you won today was your dignity and your freedom. He was right. Of course. But that did not make the pain any less real. That night, I did not want to be alone. Andrew invited me over to his house, and his wife, Martha, prepared a delicious dinner while we ate. I told them everything that had happened at the hearing. That judge is a wise woman, Martha said. She saw the truth immediately. And now Robert and Sarah know they cannot manipulate you anymore. But do you think this is the end? I asked. Or will they keep trying? That is up to them. Andrew replied, Some children never learn. Others need to hit rock bottom before they wake up. The important thing is that you have finally set your boundaries clearly. The following days were strangely quiet. For the first time since I had cut off the money, there were no calls, no visits, no threats. It was as if the judge's ruling had been a bucket of cold water that finally made them stop. I used that time to continue rebuilding my life. I joined a hiking group for seniors, and I went on a trip to the Grand Canyon, something I had wanted to do for years but never could. Because that money was better invested in Robert. I met new people, made new friends, discovered hobbies I did not even know I liked. I bought a camera and started getting into photography. I started going to concerts at the downtown Symphony Hall. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself, not for others. 1 month after the hearing, while I was at the park taking pictures of the ducks by the lake, my phone rang. It was an unsaved number, but I recognized the area code. It was from Chicago. Mary Mike. Yes. Sister. How are you? I am fine. But I need to tell you something. Robert called me yesterday. My heart raced. What did he want? Money. At first, he told me a story about how you had abandoned him, how you were being selfish, how he desperately needed help. And what did you tell him? I told him I already knew the real story, that you had told me about the secret wedding, about the 3 years of financial exploitation, about the lawsuit. He went quiet for a moment, and then his voice completely changed how he started crying. Mike, truly, it was not an act. He told me he was desperate, that Sarah was constantly pressuring him, that they were in debt for over $10,000, which they had accumulated thinking you would always be there to bail them out. That is not my problem. Mary. I know, brother, and that is exactly what I told him. But I also told him something else. I told him that if he really wanted to fix his relationship with you, he had to start by taking responsibility for his actions, not with words, but with actions. And what did he say? He asked how he could do that. I told him to start by getting a real job, to stop living above his means. And when he finally got his life in order, to call you, not to ask for money, but to ask for your forgiveness. I stayed silent, digesting this information. Mike, are you there? I am here. Sister, I am just thinking. I am not telling you to give him another chance immediately. I just wanted you to know that maybe, just maybe, he is starting to wake up. After hanging up with Mary, I sat on a park bench for a long time, watching the lake, thinking about everything that had happened. A part of me wanted to believe Robert could change. Another part of me was just tired of being disappointed. 2 weeks later, I received a text message from an unknown number. Dad, it is Robert. I know you probably do not want to talk to me. And I understand. I just wanted you to know that I got a job. It is nothing huge. It is at a warehouse. But it is honest work. I also wanted to tell you that Sarah and I are separating. She refused to accept that we had to change the way we lived. I know this does not fix anything I did. I just wanted you to know. I did not reply immediately. In fact, I did not reply at all for 3 days. I needed to think, to process, to consult with the people I trusted. Andrew advised caution. Mike, it is good that he is working and separating from Sarah, but words are cheap. Wait to see if there are actual actions of change. John, my lawyer, was more direct. Mike, legally you can do whatever you want, but as your friend, I will tell you this, do not open your checkbook again until you see at least 6 months of consistent change. If he is truly changing, he will wait. If he is just manipulating you again, he will get desperate. Mary was the most hopeful. Give him time, brother, but keep your boundaries. You can have hope without being naive. After a lot of reflection, I decided to reply, but very carefully. Robert, I am glad to hear you are working. That is a good step. Regarding the rest, I need time. You hurt me deeply, and I am not ready to talk yet. When and if I am ready, I will let you know. His response came 2 hours later. I understand. Dad, take all the time you need. I just want you to know I am sorry. I truly am sorry. The following months were a period of peace and personal growth. I continued with my activities, my new friends, my new life. I had no further contact with Robert, except for an occasional message from him updating me on his life. He never asked for money. He never asked for anything. Actually, he just shared, Dad, I got promoted at work. Dad, I moved into a much smaller apartment that I can actually afford. Dad, I started going to therapy to work on my issues. Every message came as a surprise. I did not reply to all of them, but I read every single one. And slowly, very slowly, something inside me began to soften. It was not forgiveness yet. It was just possibility. 6 months after the court hearing, on a Saturday morning, I was in my garden watering the plants when I saw a car park in front of my house. My first instinct was alarm, but then I saw it was Robert. Alone. No Sarah. No lawyers. No threats. He stepped out of the car empty-handed and stood on the street, as if waiting for permission to approach. The security cameras, which were still active, captured every moment. I put down the hose and walked toward the fence. Hi, Dad, he said, with a soft voice I had not heard in years. Robert, I know I did not tell you I was coming. If you want me to leave, I will understand. I studied his face. He looked different, thinner, more tired, but also more real. The lines of arrogance that had marked his expression for years seemed to have softened. What do you want? Just to talk. If you will let me. Nothing more. After a long moment, I opened the gate. 5 minutes. We went inside the house and sat in the living room. The exact same place where so many confrontations had happened. But this time, the energy was different. Dad, Robert started, I did not come to ask for money. I did not come to ask you to forgive me yet. I came because I have been in therapy for 4 months, and my therapist told me I needed to do something called accountability. I need to acknowledge, without any excuses, what I did to you. I listened in silence. I used you. He continued. For 3 years, I treated you like you were a bank. I let Sarah insult you, and I supported her. I excluded you from the most important day of my life because she said it would be awkward to have old people in the photos. Those words stung, but I let him continue. When you cut off the money, my first instinct was not to worry about you. It was pure panic for myself. And instead of reflecting on why you had done it, I tried to force you to pay again. I even tried to declare you incompetent so I could take your money. His voice broke. I am your son. And I treated you worse than I would treat a total stranger. And the saddest part is that I did not even realize what I was doing until Sarah left me. She told me I was a loser because I no longer had access to your money. That she had married me hoping that one day I would inherit your house and we could sell it. In that moment, I saw myself through her eyes. And I disgusted myself. Tears were streaming down his face now. Dad, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect us to go back to what we were. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did, and that I am trying to be better. Not for you, although I hope someday I can earn back your trust. I am doing it for myself, because I do not want to be the person I was. I stayed completely silent for a long moment. A part of me wanted to hug him, to tell him everything was forgiven. Another part of me remembered the pain, the humiliation, the years of being used. Robert, I finally said, I appreciate you coming here to say this, but apologies, no matter how sincere, do not erase 3 years of abuse. I need to see sustained change. I need to see that you are genuinely different. Not just sorry that you got caught. I completely understand. If you have truly changed, if you truly want to rebuild any sort of relationship with me, it is going to take time. A lot of time. And it is going to have to be on my terms. I accept that. No money, ever again. No loans. No emergencies. No, just this one time. Financially. We are strangers. Agreed. And if I see a single hint of manipulation, of lies, of falling back into old patterns, it is over forever. Understood, yes. Dad understood. He stood up to leave. Robert. I called out right as he reached the door. On Saturday mornings, I drink coffee in the park, on the bench right by the lake. If you want, you can come, just to talk, as people, not as an obligated father and a needy son. His eyes lit up with hope. This Saturday, give it one more month. I want you to think about whether you really want a relationship with me, or if you just want to ease your own guilt. If it is the first, I will see you in a month. If it is the second, it is best that you do not come. I will be there. Dad. In a month, after he left, I sat on my sofa for a very long time. I did not know if I was doing the right thing. I did not know if Robert had actually changed, or if this was just another, more sophisticated manipulation. But I knew one thing for certain. This time, I was entering any relationship with Robert with my eyes wide open, without illusions, without unrealistic expectations, without sacrificing my own peace and stability. If it worked out, it worked out. If it did not, I had already proven that I could live happily without him. That night, Andrew came over to visit, and I told him about Robert's visit. What do you think, Mike? Do you think he has really changed? I do not know. Andrew, honestly, I do not know. But this time, I am not going to destroy myself trying to figure it out. If he has changed, I will see it in time. If not, I will be fine either way. That, Andrew said with a smile, is the answer of a man who finally found his freedom. And he was right. For months, I had been building a life that did not depend on Robert, that did not center around Robert, that did not sacrifice itself for Robert. If he eventually became a part of that life, he would be welcome. But if not, I would still be happy. That night I slept deeply, without the anxiety that had accompanied every single interaction with my son for years. No matter what happened with Robert, I had already won the most important thing. I had recovered myself. The month passed faster than I expected. During that time, I kept up with my new routine. The painting classes, the chess club, the outings with the hiking group. Every day I woke up excited for what was to come, not anxious about what crisis I would have to solve. Andrew and Martha had become part of my chosen family. We ate dinner together at least twice a week. They introduced me to more neighbors, and I discovered there was an entire community that had been there all along, completely invisible to me because I was so focused on Robert and Sarah. I met Charles, a 70-year-old widower who hosted classic movie nights at his house. I met Betty, who taught me how to cook dishes I had not made since Carol was alive. I met Harvey, a retired professor who introduced me to a world of literature I had abandoned decades ago. For the first time in my adult life, I had friends who were not connected to Robert. Friends who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could give them. The night before my scheduled Saturday with Robert, I could barely sleep. It was not out of anxiety, but uncertainty. A part of me hoped he would show up, and another part of me hoped he would not. I was not sure which would be easier to handle. Saturday dawned beautifully. Clear skies. Perfect temperature. I prepared my thermos of coffee like always and walked to the park at 9 in the morning. I sat on my usual bench by the lake and pulled out my book. 9:30. No sign of Robert. 10. Still alone. 10:15. I started thinking he was not going to come. Then, at 10:20, I saw him walking down the park trail. He was carrying 2 coffees from a local shop. Not from the expensive coffee chain he used to frequent with Sarah, but from Joe's Coffee on the corner, where the coffee is simple but made with love. "I am late," he said, sitting down next to me on the bench. "I am sorry. There was traffic on the interstate. It is all right." He offered me one of the coffees. "I know you brought your own, but I remembered you used to like the coffee from Joe's. I hope you still do." I took the coffee. It was made exactly the way I liked it, with cinnamon and a touch of brown sugar. I had not tasted it in years. "How did you remember how I like it? Mom used to make it for you like this," he said softly. "When I was a kid, sometimes she let me help her. She taught me the exact recipe." We sat in silence for a moment, drinking our coffee, watching the ducks in the lake. "Dad," he finally said, "these past few months, I have been thinking a lot. In therapy, my doctor made me do an exercise where I had to write down all the memories I had of you, good and bad. And the first 15 years of my life are full of beautiful memories. You teaching me how to ride a bike in this exact park. You taking me to see pro wrestling even though you hated it, just because I loved it. You staying awake all night when I had pneumonia, cooling my forehead with damp cloths." His voice cracked slightly. "And then when I met Sarah, it is like all those memories were erased. She had this way of talking about you that made you seem lesser. She would say things like, 'Your dad is so old-fashioned,' or 'Your dad does not understand how the modern world works.' And I let her. Worse, I started repeating those things. Robert, no. Let me finish. I need to say this. Sarah had plans for your house from the moment we met. She showed me interior design magazines, telling me, 'Imagine what we could do with this house when it is ours,' as if your passing was just a temporary inconvenience between us and a valuable property." Tears were streaming down his face now. And God forgive me. "Dad," I nodded. "I made plans with you still alive and healthy. And while we made those plans, we squeezed you for every single dollar we could get out of you." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "The wedding," he continued, "was her idea. She said that if we invited you, you would want to give your opinion on everything, that you would make the day about you instead of us." And I believed her. Now, I realize she was just afraid that if you came, you would see her for what she really was. You would see the superficiality, the greed, the manipulation, and maybe you would have opened my eyes sooner. Why are you telling me all this now? Because in therapy, I learned that I cannot have an honest relationship with you if I keep secrets. And because you need to know that I completely understand why you did what you did. It was not cruelty on your part. It was self-preservation. It was self-respect. It was all the things I should have learned from you, but ignored. We drank our coffee in silence for a few minutes. A duck waddled up to our feet. waiting for food. I did not bring bread. I said, I did. Robert pulled a bag out of his backpack. Another memory. We used to come here on Saturdays and feed the ducks, while we tossed little pieces of bread to the ducks. I felt something shifting in my chest. It was not full forgiveness yet, but it was something, a softening, an opening. Robert, I said after a while, I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate your honesty, but I need you to understand something. I do not know if we will ever have the relationship we had when you were a kid again. That time has passed. That innocence is lost. I know. The best we can hope for is to build something entirely new. Something based on who we are right now. Not who we used to be. Or who we wish we were. Does that seem fair? It means you will have to get to know me all over again. Because I have changed. 2. I am no longer the man who will drop everything to rescue you. I am no longer the father who valued being needed more than being respected. I want to get to know that new man. Robert said, if you will let me. Over the following weeks, Robert and I met every Saturday at the park, always at the same time, always on the same bench. We talked about everything and nothing, about his job at the warehouse, about my painting classes, about books we had read, movies we had watched. We never talked about money. We never brought up the past. Except when it came up naturally. Slowly. Very slowly. We started getting to know each other as people, not as an obligated father and a needy son. One Saturday, Robert arrived holding something in his hands. It was an envelope. What is this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a check for $250. Robert, I already told you I do not want your money. It is not for you to spend. Dad, it is symbolic. For the next few years, I am going to give you a check every single month. I do not expect you to cash them, but I want you to see that I am trying to give back a little bit of what I took. I cannot return the $120,000 I spent. I will probably never make that much money at once in my life, but I can try to make up for it somehow. Please, Dad, let me do this. Not for you, although I hope it means something to you. I am doing it for myself, to prove to myself that I can be responsible, that I can give instead of just taking. I took the check. I had zero intention of cashing it, but I understood what it meant for him to give it to me. Thank you. The months passed. Winter gave way to spring. My life continued to blossom. I had my first photography exhibition at a local community center. I won a chess tournament at my club. I traveled to Colorado with the hiking group. And every Saturday, Robert was at the park bench, waiting for me with coffee from Joe's. One day, 6 months after our first meeting in the park, Robert arrived with news. Dad, I got offered a promotion at work, shift supervisor. It is a 40% raise. That is wonderful. Basen, there is something else. With this raise, I will finally be able to start paying off my real debts, not just the symbolic ones with you, but the real ones, the credit cards, the loans. In 2 years, I could be completely debt-free. I am proud of you. Those words came out naturally, and I realized they were true. I was proud, not of the Robert he had been, but of the Robert he was trying to be. Dad, he said after a moment, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you will ever be able to forgive me completely? I thought about that question for a long moment. I have already forgiven you. Robert, his eyes filled with tears. But I continued. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean things go back to exactly how they were. It just means I am no longer carrying the weight of the anger. It means I wish you well. It means I am willing to build something new with you. That is all I can ask for. 1 year after the day I cut off the funding, Andrew hosted a dinner in my honor. He invited all the friends I had made over that year. Charles, Betty, Harvey, the hiking group, my chess club buddies. Robert was there, too. He had met Andrew a few months earlier, and the two had developed a mutual respect. During the dinner, Andrew stood up to make a toast. To Mike, he said. 1 year ago, he was a man who lived entirely for others, who measured his worth by how much he could give, who had forgotten that he also deserved to receive. Today, we toast to the man who found himself, who learned that saying no is not selfishness. It is self-respect, who discovered that true family is not just blood. It is the people who value you for exactly who you are. To Mike, to his freedom, to his new life. Cheers, everyone shouted. I looked around the table. All these people who I did not even know a year ago. All these people who were now an important part of my life. And Robert, sitting among them, not as the center of my world, but as a part of it. After the dinner, when everyone had left, Robert stayed behind to help me clean up. Dad, he said, while we were washing dishes, I want you to know something. I know I will never be able to be the son I should have been during those 3 years. That is lost forever. Robert, but I want to be the son I can be right now. The one who comes to visit you, not because he needs something, but because he wants to be here. The one who worries about your well-being just as much as you worried about mine. The one who, someday, when you truly need me, will actually be there for you. I placed my hand on his shoulder. That is all I can ask for. That night, after Robert left, I sat in my living room, the exact same living room where, 1 year ago, I had the worst confrontation of my entire life. The same living room where Robert and Sarah had brought a lawyer to declare me incompetent. The same living room where I had hit rock bottom. But now, it was different. It was mine again. Not just legally, but emotionally. It was my space, my peace, my home. I thought about the entire journey I had been on. The humiliation of the secret wedding, the desperation of cutting off the money, the fear during the legal threats, the determination during the court battle, the uncertainty during those first months of silence, the cautious hope when Robert started to change. And now, finally, the peace. It was not a perfect peace. There were still days when I thought about those 3 lost years, about the 120,000 wasted dollars, about the relationship I could have had with Robert if things had been different. But those days were becoming less and less frequent. And more, I woke up simply grateful for the life I had now, for the freedom I had reclaimed, for the people I had met, for the self-respect I had recovered. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Robert. Thanks for dinner tonight. Dad, it was really special meeting your friends. I love you. I smiled. A year ago, a message like that would have filled me with desperate hope, a burning need to believe everything was finally okay. Now, I just appreciated it for exactly what it was. A nice message from a son who was actively trying. I love you too. Son. See you on Saturday. And that was enough. Because I had learned the most important lesson of my life. Loving someone does not mean allowing them to destroy you. Being a father does not mean sacrificing your own happiness. Giving does not mean you have to leave yourself completely empty. I had learned how to say no. I had learned how to put myself first. I had learned that I deserved respect. Not just as a father, but as a human being. And most importantly, I had learned that it is never too late to start over. At 65 years old, after 45 years of marriage, 35 years of being a father, and 3 years of being used, I had finally found something I did not even know I was looking for. I had found myself. That night, I slept deeply, with a smile on my face. Tomorrow would be another day in my new life, a day I would live on my own terms. And that, after all, was everything I had ever wanted. 2 years later, Robert showed up at my front door on a Sunday morning. It was not our usual Saturday, which immediately caught my attention. "Dad," he said when I opened the door, "there is someone I want you to meet." Standing behind him was a young woman with a genuine smile. She did not have that superficial gleam Sarah had always carried. There was a real warmth in her eyes. "Dad, this is Anna. We have been dating for 6 months. Anna, this is my dad. Mike, it is so nice to meet you." "Mike," Anna said, extending her hand. "Robert has told me so much about you, about your love for photography, your chess club, your recent trip to Colorado." I noticed immediately what she did not say. She did not mention my house. She did not mention my money. She did not mention inheritances or properties. She spoke about who I was, not what I had. "It is a pleasure to meet you. Anna, please, come in." I was just making coffee. While I brewed the coffee, I listened to Robert and Anna talking in the living room. They were talking about a project they were doing together, volunteering at a local soup kitchen. They were talking about books they were reading. They spoke like equal partners, not like a user and the used. When I brought them the coffee, Anna asked me about the photographs on my wall. "You took these, they are beautiful, especially this one of the sunrise in the park." "Thank you. It is of my favorite bench, right where Robert and I meet on Saturdays." "I know." She smiled. "Robert took me there. He told me how the two of you rebuilt your relationship. He says that bench is the most important place in his life, because it is where he learned what it means to be a real man." I looked at Robert. He nodded, his eyes welling up with tears. In that moment, I knew my son had truly changed. Not perfectly. No one changes perfectly. But genuinely, and more importantly, I knew that I had changed. Too, because instead of immediately looking for red flags in Anna, instead of being on guard against manipulation, I simply sat back and enjoyed the moment. If it worked out between them, wonderful. If it did not, Robert would know how to handle it. It was no longer my job to rescue him. It was his job to live his own life. And that freedom, that profound peace of knowing I was no longer responsible for the happiness of my adult son, was the greatest gift I had ever given myself. When they left that afternoon, Andrew stepped out of his house and walked over. "Did you see that I told him? Robert has a new girlfriend. She seems very nice. And how are you doing with that?" "I am good," I said honestly. "If she is the right person for him, I will be happy. If she is not, he will figure it out. But either way, I will be completely fine." Andrew patted me on the back. "That, Mike, is the sound of a completely free man." And he was right. I was finally, completely, totally free.